Je commence. You have been the first from the Western media to have asked me, to have forwarded to me that question, what happened in Vietnam and what was wrong. Because you are the first, I have accepted immediately to receive you. Because for nearly 2 decades, no one cared for what happened in Vietnam. But what I have to say is very important to me. And for nearly 20 years, I have not had much opportunity to practice my English. So from time to time, I prefer to refer to something written. First of all, I wish to ask you, have you not noticed that strange doom on the US? Have you not noticed that President Carter, for instance, has been the 5th ill-fated US president? And have you not noticed this also, that those politicians, very bright, very talented, who believed that they could say in 1975, for instance, leave Vietnam behind your back. They believed that they could say that to the American people, forget it. In spite of their brio, in spite of their talent, it is they, in fact, who have that fate. So it is something strange that Vietnam could attract such doom on those who believe they can despise my country. And the Americans are not the first. The first, for instance, was Mendes France of France. He had such a political stature that no one understands why, after signing the division of Vietnam, he has just disappeared. He who wanted to relegate Vietnam in the past, that past was for him. So now, I think for that doom started with the division of Vietnam. Why? Because colonial France at that time could have transmitted the country in its entirety to its legitimate power. But instead, it took advantage of a lost battle, while it has not lost at all the war. It took advantage of a lost battle to divide the country in concert with the communists and to put the Vietnamese people in front of an accomplished fact. This was the first treason. Now I explain the first treason towards the legitimate power. Now I must explain why the legitimate power is so important, because I see very well that for the West, you know very well what means the importance of legitimate power. But you behave, you act, excuse me when I say you, yes, but that means in a general way. But really the West behaves as if we, the third world, we have no sense of a legitimate power. That for us, what does it mean for them any head is good? In fact, we must have a sane head if one wishes the Holy Spirit to express itself through it. To have a sane head, what does it mean? It means that the power must be legitimate. Legitimate means duly elected. That means that that power must accept peaceful confrontation with the one which preceded it and all those who accept to have people's votes without resorting to violent means. In Vietnam, the only power to have fulfilled those conditions was the government of President Ngô Đình Nhu, because he was the only one to have accepted peaceful confrontation with Emperor Bảo Đại, who preceded him. And after him, no one has dared, after his murder, no one dared to accept peaceful confrontation with the one who ought to have been elected in his place in case of his disappearance, according to the constitution of the Republic of Vietnam founded by him. So when one says that Ho Chi Minh has obtained the abdication of Bảo Đại, for instance, what does it mean? He obtained this through coercion, because Bảo Đại returned 4 years after to challenge him. So the only legitimate power of Vietnam was the one assumed by President Ngô Đình Nhu, and it was precisely that one that the U.S. It was precisely that one who was beheaded by the U.S. So now I think that you begin to understand why there is that doom on the states, on its head, after what it has been done in Vietnam. Now I must explain why there was that beheading. I'm sorry to recall.
It's not beheading,
No, I mean the Vietnam has been beheaded.
Then perhaps a more clear way is to say why there was a coup, or why the head of government was...
Yes. No, but when I mean like this, because I consider that a legitimate power of Vietnam is the head. And if you betray, if you how do you call it, you make it disappear, it is exactly as you have beheaded Vietnam.
The whole country.
Yes. Yes, that Vietnam is a human being. One can say its legitimate power is its head, and when you betray, you attack it. It is as if you have beheaded it. You see. Now I explain why there was that thing, and in fact, it was only that after the Bay of Pigs, after the Berlin Wall, after the Cuban missiles affair, after these three, we can say, blunders, the U.S. government believed that it had to recoup some prestige with my country, citing the Cuban missiles affair. People may be amazed because it has always been presented as a prowess, but in fact I don't think so. I think that even for the U.S. government, they understood that it was not at all a prowess, because I believe that the US government was deceived by the Soviets, who, incapable of defending Cuba, succeeded to obtain that pact of non-aggression on the island in exchange of the withdrawal of a few missiles.
Stop.
So I consider that the US government of that time was deceived by the Soviets because they were absolutely incapable to defend Cuba, and they obtained, in exchange of the withdrawal of a few missiles, no one knows if they were made of tin or not, because for their use. So one can say that they obtained it with very little price, that pact of non-aggression. So I think that because of all these failures, blunders, the US government of that time could not resist, was too tempted. It was too tempted, it was irresistible to use its only winning card, which was Vietnam. To speak of Vietnam as a winning card, surely people would feel amazed, because it has always been presented as something lost, it was a mess, etc., etc. This is not true. The very proof that it was a winning card was in the fact that the US jumped in it, wanted to be there, had to kill to intervene. So no one can believe that materialistic as they are, as are the Americans, that they would do all those things to jump in a lost place. So the very proof is there. But for the proof for the American government was, in fact, that we have pacified the whole South with the strategic hamlets program, and in spite of that, seeing that they have lost the guerrilla, the subversive war, the communists dare not to escalate. And since they dare not to escalate, the Americans saw very well that if they dare not, it was only out of fear of our ally, the US. So they considered that all the factors of a sure victory were there to be taken. If only the Ngodins, that means President Ngodin Siem and my husband, could be replaced by people who would accept American intervention. Because we did not want that intervention. So they had to be killed. Just that. And in order to do that, to commit that treason, the Western media, in the wake of the US, were drummed up to present us as dictators. For this, I must read it, because really it is very important for me. We were presented, even now, dictators. Yet, we have never infringed our constitution, which was more democratic than the US one, and more democratic than the French and British ones. In what way? Our legislature had, for example, the right given by a 1962 constitutional amendment to question publicly the executive any time in plenary session. This is spared to the American executive. Besides, our executive have no right, like in France and in England, to put an end before it's time to the legislature. Never. They had to coexist. until their respective turn. The people cannot be summoned because the two cannot get along. We find that too futile. And for important questions, there are the referendums. So the proof is there. Of course, the amendment came only in 1962, but who has said it? Who has informed the world to say that our constitution is like this? That means more democratic. Of course, we did not have much time to apply our amendment, but at least it was there. So it is absolutely dishonest to present us as dictators, while we had never infringed our constitution. There is no proof of any wrongdoing from us towards our constitution. But to give some credit to at least to when the press, the media at that time, the Western media at that time called us dictators, it was made of all clothes that Buddhist affair, to present us at least not only as dictators but rejected by a majority of our people. That Buddhist affair. You know why they use that theme? It is just because with that they are sure that the true Buddhists will never denounce them. Because according to Buddhist belief, no action, no reaction. So a true Buddhist never react. They would never go out and publicly denounce anyone. So using the Buddhist etiquette, they are sure not to be denounced by the true Buddhists. On the other side, that they know that for the West, it is religious fanaticism is in general considered as something typical to immature people, mentally underdeveloped countries, so it doesn't have to explain itself, to justify itself. So because of these two reasons, they chose the Buddhists to, how do you call that, etiquette, I don't know, label for their lie, to give credit when they accuse us of being unpopular dictators. But it was enough for us to arrest a few agitators and asking the United Nations to send an investigation team, and pricked Buddhist balloon went flat. Because of that, the US government considered that it has lost the faith and decided to finish with the legitimate power. Vietnam with a so-called putsch, in which President Ngô Đình Nhu and my husband were assassinated. Now I go to the second treason. The second treason came with on January 27, 1973, in Paris, 12 nations, among them the highest, the greatest powers of the world, Soviet, China, of course the US first, Soviets, China, France, England, and so on. 12 gathered very solemnly in Paris to sign to guarantee the right of the Vietnamese people to choose their legitimate power under international control. In spite of that, that treaty, international treaty, has never been respected. Why? All those who have signed it behave as if General Min, who surrendered in 1975 to the communists, represent Vietnam. Since he represents Vietnam, he has surrendered, the affair is closed. But it is absolutely hypocritical, because General Min represents only himself and those who have been accomplices with the US in the beheading of Vietnam. Since the International Treaty of Paris has no other purpose than to assure to Vietnam as a whole, North and South, its right to recover under international guarantee its legitimate power, the Paris Agreement cannot therefore serve as an alibi for another treason. And that treason is to take General Min as our representative, while he is not. And this double treason is covered by the show of guilt complex. That guilt complex allows the US not to be questioned and also permits the communists not to be questioned. But in fact, by making a show of that guilt complex, the US pretends to be wholly in front of those who do not know the truth, while in fact its so-called guilt complex, well publicized but not at all elucidated, only helps to cover up until now its double crime, all against Vietnam as a nation. The consequences are the religious fanaticism. In 1965, when the Buddhist affair went off US hands, one of the golden boys of the US went with American planes, bombs and all those things, and smashed the pagodas. After that, of course, the US was convinced that any religious fanaticism can be treated in that way. The second consequences, it is that the US embassy in Saigon has been used as a center for subversive war, undeclared subversive war against Vietnam, to destabilize the country, and including the murder of the legitimate chief. I don't know what was done in Iran, but I consider that the role of the diplomats are not to cover an undeclared subversive war, because it would be too unjust for them to have their life endangered because of that. That's why I think that when I hear now that never again what? Never again, that means that the embassies cannot be transformed like in Vietnam, in vice versa, not to think that they can change with retaliations, swift and soft, because in that case we can brace ourselves for a real global war, because whoever can do that, use an embassy for a center of subversive war, but not the US, because you have consecrated your dollars to God. In God we trust. So as soon as the US is incoherent with itself, it will receive immediately the consequences. So now you can put up your questions.
Madam, the period between 1954 and 1963, during which President Siem was head of government, can you tell us a little bit of what he was like? Can you characterize him and say maybe if he changed during that 9-year period?
Oh, he has never changed. He to characterize him. I can say that he was a just man, like in the Bible. That means he could err, but he always wanted to make amends immediately. And that's why I consider that it was a crime from the West to have condemned him, to have killed him, without giving him the opportunity to even answer, to speak. Because at that time, you do not know that thing. He asked, but what's wrong? What would you like me to do? And you know what was said to him? The first ambassador, Ambassador Nolte, was dismissed in an impertinent way because he did not go along with the methods of the U.S. embassy at that time. He was replaced by another one. That one, at the question of President Diem, asking, what's wrong? What must I say? Must I do? Just say, nothing. Just keep quiet. Don't say anything. All this is mounted by the press, by the media. Leave us, we shall arrange it. And it is just for him to keep quiet and to be murdered, to be stabbed in the back without speaking.
What about your early impressions of the Americans? When they were first there, did you feel they knew what they were doing?
My first impressions of the Americans, at first I was very, how do you say, bien intentionné, means I have the best prejudices for them. I consider that they are genuine people and with whom one can get along very well. There is no problem. But
people like Colonel Lansdale, who was giving them advice at the time, for instance.
yes, Colonel Lansdale, I must say that I don't know him very well. I don't know him very well. I met him a few times, but I think that really for the President Ngô Đình Nhu met the Americans, and genuinely he likes them. He considers that he could get along with them. For us, we did not have many opportunities to see them, but I believe that Colonel Lansdale, now he's a general, was a good friend, as many, and but like Ambassador Nolte also, but those who are our good friends were dismissed.
Madam, during the museum period, you were known as the First Lady of Vietnam. Could you define your role a little bit?
Oh no, this is too complicated, and if it would make volumes to speak of how I was caught by the skin of the neck like a kitten and thrown in an arena. Arena, you see? Yes, and it was.
Next, Sam.
Madam, during this early period, you were known as the First Lady of Vietnam. Could you define your role first?
My role? No, it is too difficult to define it. I can just say that I was taken by the skin of the neck by God, and like a little kitten thrown in an arena, and with the lions. But I believe that it is just because I was born under the sign of the lion, and that God believes that I can get along with them. But in fact, it is too long a story to speak of it. I have already written at least 3 volumes about it, so I prefer to reserve it.
What about how the Western press defined you. For instance, there was this thing of calling you the Dragon Lady. Would you like to comment on that?
I believe that when they call me like this, it is just because they see that I looked fearless, and it is true. My husband, he was very unhappy with, on one side, his brother, the other side, his wife. He considered both of us as babes in the woods, who absolutely, how do you say, inconscient. That means we have no sense of the reality. That to jump in the fray and you don't have the impression that you are fighting ferocious beasts. And he said all the time that to his brother, you should be a monk, and you, to me, you should stay home and be a quiet housewife. And I said, of course, I.
No. Sorry. Take 8, roll 4.
If I'm left to myself, surely I would follow immediately the advice of my husband, just to return home, to knit, to sew, to cook. It is really the only things I like in life. But when I was in my country, people went to me, and they asked me, you should do this, you should do that. And I see very well that if I did not do those things, nobody would do it. That's why I have organized everything in such a way that I can pass over to them immediately, because I did not like the life I led at that time, not at all. And they called me Dragon Lady, because they see that they saw that I was absolutely determined, that nothing could stop me. That the only thing if they want to stop me, they must explain to me in what way I was wrong. If they cannot explain it, I didn't care. And because of that, they saw very well that I was afraid of nothing. And you see why that calling came? They invited me, the press invited me to go. At first they said, Mr. New, the news, no news, good news. They must leave the country. So they invited me to go to explain my position at on the U.S. platforms. You see, on the with the press. When I left my country, hardly I arrived in Belgrade only at that time. It was said to me that from the State Department that I should not go, I ought not to go to the States, because they would not guarantee my safety. So they invite me in order for me to leave the country, but as soon as I leave my country, don't come. I said, no, I have left my country just to go there. And the US will show to the world if they are capable or not to defend a weak woman on their territory. And
so by this time, so this is October 1963.
Yes, exactly.
You already were disillusioned with the Americans?
Oh, but at the time it started, they invited me, and after I left my country, they told me that. Of course, that I was delusioned. Disillusioned. And because of that, everybody said, but considered me as a Dragon Lady, because I just challenged them. That's all.
Madam, what about your husband? How would you define his role?
He was everything in Vietnam. He organized the country when the president was away, and when the president returned, everything was there to greet him. And Without him, the president would not be, I don't think that it would be easy for him to rule the country, to govern the country. That's why when it was requested, he was requested to send away my husband. He said it was absolutely a stupid demand, because he knew very well that my husband can do without him, but he could not do without my husband. But my husband is, I believe that he was too much ahead of his time, of his people. Someday people will understand. Now I cannot explain here like this.
Take 9.
We've talked a bit about the Buddhist crisis in 1963. During that time, there was a quote which you allegedly made, which had a lot of play in the Western press. A quote in which you allegedly said that you were happy when the Bonzes barbecued themselves. Would you comment on that quote?
Oh, but I had just to comment about what I said on the Buddhist. I had the opportunity to do it several times, and the only thing I can say that everybody, if they are confronted with things like that, they finally have to go to the same solution. That means with people mad of glory or false glory, who accept to be drugged and to be burned to death, and for rights which have never been contested by anyone, and what to do to stop them accepting to be murdered by the plotters. The only thing I could do at that time is to ridicule them. Because as long as it was emphasized as something absolutely deserving of praise, of course there will be always people mad of false glory who would accept it. I had to do the contrary.
Madam, who was behind Buddhist crisis?
I believe that at first it was the communists. But it would never be able to inflate at that proportion without the help, without the aid of the Americans, of the media, Western media. So after it has become absolutely an American affair, and after the murder of the Modins, when it went off hands, they had to bomb it.
From about August in 1963, there were already rumors of coups and counter-coups. Madam, could you explain why you felt that the situation was secure enough at that time to leave the country?
In 1963, I had to leave the country. It was, for me, I could, because as I already told you, I have always organized everything in order for people to do without me. So for my own occupations, for my women's movement, I could leave. It was all organized in that way. And I have a mission, which was to prevent them. If I could not prevent them to commit the crime, at least my mission was to do in such a way that that crime could not be perfect. So I had to go to tell first, to say, things are like this. So if it happens after, you will know that it is all premeditated.
In your opinion, who was responsible for the 1963 coup?
In fact, I believe that the US government at that time, if it has not committed so many blunders, so many errors, Bay of Pigs, Berlin Wall, Cuban missiles, it would never do it, that coup. But after 3 mistakes, like the ones I have just cited, it had to do something in Vietnam to, to own Vietnam. And for them, all the factors of success were there. They considered that they could not leave it to us, but what they have done was exactly to rob the poor. That's why there is that doom on them now.
Who was responsible for the deaths of your husband and your brother-in-law?
You have made so many investigations, books and books, and that means the US has done that, and they cannot find. That means, according to me, that they just do those investigations really to lure people, because if really they want to know who is responsible, they would find it. I don't want to accuse anyone.
Sorry. Take 10, roll 5.
I do not want to accuse anyone. I do not want to go into the details, but the evidence is there. The responsible was the Kennedy government. And it is sure that the murder of Chief of State and of his brother, that really the beheading of Vietnam could not be done without the president himself giving the green light. This is apparently things are like that. Apparently responsibility is absolutely on President Kennedy. But the fact, I don't know. The truth, I don't know. I would like to know.
Stop. Take 11.
In 1963, there were some rumors that your husband was insane, that he was power mad, and that he was a heroin addict. Now, can you comment on that?
Yes, they have said a lot of things against my husband. They even said that he was a dog fine and all those things. And you see, whoever can say anything against me, I don't care. But I know my husband, and hearing all those things against him, I cannot bear it. I cannot bear because I know him. He has such a great sense of responsibility. And he saw so well that he was not understood, that his self-confidence, which was based on the faith in God and in himself, was considered as madness because he was confronted to the United States. But for such a faith, what does it mean? A human power. But nobody understood, so they said a lot of things, but for years and years, the death of my husband, I could accept it. But the debasing of his personality, that I cannot bear it. But now, the revenge is coming. The revenge is coming that all those who have attacked him, who have said all those things, when the truth will be known about what he has found and what is really his madness, all those people will be ashamed. Will be ashamed. They would like to swallow all they have said, because it will show how fools they were not to have understood that man. That hour is coming.
There are also rumors that because your husband felt so betrayed by the Americans, that he made overtures towards the North Vietnamese communists. Can you also comment on this?
Overtures to the communists. In fact, as I have explained, we won the war. If we had not won the war, never the US government would jump in Vietnam. We won the war. The communists dared not to escalate. They had only one alternative. They had only one alternative. Either to escalate, they dare not, or to negotiate. So it is they who sent the people to us, because my husband has found a solution against subversive war. That solution permits his people to live with the war, against the war, and in spite of the war. And because of that, the communists could not do anything. So, rather than, instead of escalating the war, they sent the people to talk with my husband. And this was turned over against my husband, as if he made the first steps. Not at all. This is a lie. Not at all. It was they who made the first steps.
What did he say to them?
He, at that time, we just started to talk with them, to know what do you propose. And they arrived, and in order not to lose face, because we did everything at that time to make things easy for them. So they arrived, and they just asked, what are your conditions for your open arms program? That means it was translated in open arms program, but in fact, Tiêu Hoi means the return of the prodigal brother. So we said to them, we shall kill le veau gras, that means for the prodigal son, they killed the veal, the fat veal. But we told them, we shall kill the fat veal. And I think that the US got that answer from us, and they believed that they would be the fat veal. Maybe. Otherwise, I would not explain why they did what they did. Why they did what they did.
What do you think went wrong? Why did such an unhappy ending happen in 1963?
All that is, arrogance. Comes from arrogance. The US was convinced it possessed the truth and was full of contempt for. There were it was too materialistic to understand, and that I cannot even accuse them or be too bitter against them, because I must say that even our own people did not understand anything. A lot of our people did not understand anything. Or they materialistic. They considered that my husband was absolutely insane to despise all that material strength and to cling to his solution. But it was just a misunderstanding out of arrogance on one side and a kind of lack of of intelligence on the other side. Because for the Americans, I believe that it was arrogance, but for our own people, I believe that it was just a lack of intelligence, immaturity.
You had something that you wanted to add about this.
Yes, my last, the message really, I want to forward to the American people is just this. Don't ask your people to make flying trapeze performances without giving them a net. That is to say, don't try to regain prestige lost since Vietnam with the build-up of a frightening force of dissuasion while ignoring God's laws and His Christ teaching. So the US must really accept the truth about Vietnam first and make amends.